that one of the most important engagements that you'll ever have with your organization and your organization's goal is a merger or an acquisition, and that will literally like define your organization's steps going forward, how it actually wants to evolve and mature. So from that perspective, I want to start with the agenda items that we have. That's the mergers and acquisition pain points. It's important to cover the pain points. What's happening with post-merger integration imperatives that we tend to have. What about merger and acquisition stages and engagement? What about the engagement effort? Let's do a quick case study. And I just want to share that within us as next. We're actually here to help all of the individuals who are in this journey with us. So that being said, first slide, pain points. So I'm hoping this is a painful slide. And the rationale for that is that, guess what? A successful merger does not equate to a successful integration. Often M&As are affected by process and technology issues that are much beyond their control, and not knowing about those issues results in more grievance downstream than what you're looking at upstream events. So from our research, and I've got Samira over here, and from Samira's research, we've realized that there's 32% business and systems technology initiatives that there's actually a pain from a merger and acquisition perspective. When it comes to integration or acquisition, it's roughly about 40% in budgets and finances, but again, a major 22% happening for organizations that are trying to be part of a merger acquisition activity. So that being said, within our research activity, we found information reliability, timeliness of information, business and systems technology, new business models, getting both organizations in the same place, process, workflow, integration, schedule, cost, time, quality. A lot of these are literally like your smorgasbord things that have continuously plagued organizations as they're trying to do mergers and acquisitions on an ongoing basis. But within these areas, if you notice, most of these are, are tackled by enterprise architects. Yet when it comes to actual engagement, the engagement is EAs are engaged downstream as opposed to upstream, and I'll show you the upstream and downstream pieces just in a bit. That takes us to the point that, from 2010 all the way to let's calculate 2019, we've had roughly about, on average, 40,000 of these mergers and acquisitions happening throughout the globe. And they range anywhere between $2.7 trillion in 2010 and $3.3 trillion in 2019, even within the year's context of 2021. Within Canada and Canadian context, we have massive mergers and acquisition going on, especially in the digital front, with Rogers purchasing, or Rogers engaging with Shaw for their mergers and acquisition activity, which also impacts Freedom Mobile. Also, we have CN Rail that is also trying to go into a mergers and acquisition activity with down south in the States for, I think it's Kansas Railway. So that as an activity is ongoing, but despite all of that, if you notice, just this 27% of all mergers, acquisition transactions resulted in both operating margin improvement and revenue growth. So despite all the efforts happening, guess what? There's a definite pain that we do observe. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And the next slide, we're talking about post-merger integration imperatives and EA. So the phase that been found out is that set the direction, capture the value, build the organization. And the PMI imperative identify, start by defining the objective, rigorously manage, organize integration, insist on senior leadership commitment. But that literally is also translates into EA to say that identify strategic outcomes, identify delta between current state, target state, ensure cohesive team is present, ensure that you know what your strategic objectives are. Over here, we can see that there's aggressively pursue synergies with the integration objectives, keep current business strong by involving current customers in the integration, decide early and explicitly on IT for integrated company. That itself is also a lot about mapping the business landscape, the technology footprint, and looking at solutions. So that brings us to the idea of like building the organization. You don't only set the direction, you not only capture the value, but you also have to build the organization, and that ties into the creating the target state solutions towards delivering a team success for an organization. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide, and we want to talk about the M&A stages and where EA is actually engaged. So the M&A stages, this particular stage definition is really coming from McKinsey, and they do quite a bit of mergers and acquisitions throughout the globe, or mergers and support throughout the globe. So the main part is due diligence. Then there's design and ramp up. Then there's the phase of announcement. There's pre-close planning and implementation. There's day 01. There's integration, implementation, and there's stabilize and transform. So from that perspective, the due diligence part is where evaluation occurs with regards to the company. Design and ramp up is where you're trying to look at the design aspects, gain buy-in, and also try to create the target state. Announcement is where you're probably doing some form of validation with this information that you've gained and gathered, and probably looking at validating some of the design effort that's happened. Pre-close, a lot of implementation or creation of the solution blueprint itself. And then day 01, or actually really leading up to day 01, and then it's integration and implementation, and stabilize and transform, where literally this piece is post day 01, and this is where a lot of failures are actually occurring. And to that, the effort that EAs need to be involved or engaged are literally like fairly modest in the very beginning during the due diligence perspective. Little less than design and ramp up. The announcement phase, it's fairly low, but pre-close planning and implementation, considerable amount of work that happens for enterprise architects, and considerable contribution can happen with enterprise architects. And day 01 is really all hands, but guess what? EA is actually on call, present if there's any architectural support issues that is required. Then we have the post day 01, the integration and implementation. That being said, if you notice the yellow, this is really all about planning for success, and that success is really coming all the way from here to this at this point of day 01. But if EA is involved in at the very tail end of once the merger acquisition has completed and all subsequent activities that needs to happen, and guess what? There's definitely a huge ramp-up effort. There's definitely issues that impact the organization on really doing all of these due diligence values that EA tends to deliver. So I'm going to go to this next slide, which is nothing but the conjugation of the previous slide, where we talked about enterprise architecture and points of time where enterprise architects is involved in the M&A process, but at the same time, also the effort or the degree of effort that was required by the EA team. So this actually really shows during due diligence, you need to perform evaluation of the business capability model, the application portfolio model, ensure that there's business data glossary, ensure there's infrastructure tech stack, ensure there's security incidents that are logged, understood, understand the risk log, look at the solutions backlog, and identify the enterprise standards that are actually present for the organization. So all what we're trying to do over here is get the lay of the land, both for the organization that is trying to be acquired or the organization that is trying to acquire or actually merge. And I keep on mentioning to people that the mergers, acquisition, and divestitures also, it's not necessarily a engagement where it's like two calm streams gathering together. Oftentimes, we see that it's fairly extensive amount of work and a lot of pressure, etc., is there. So once the due diligence piece is completed, and I know that due diligence does happen, but it happens through a audit perspective as opposed to a what you call it, a actual review and continuous support perspective. So then we go to the design and ramp up, and you're trying to really create a target state based on this evaluation that you've created. And that has a merged footprint, a decommissioned strategy, maturity model for business services, and definitely a solutions catalog that identifies, hey, you know what, these are the stuff that we need to do. This is the solution description, this is the system level impact, and this is the potential time and resource that is required to deliver on this particular target state. During announcement, as you notice, there's less amount of work, but guess what? EAs are now being able to engage with the second organization and validate some of these issues and look at that the gap analysis is true, look at the validation, look at the solutions catalog if it's actually completely validated, because post announcement, you have the ability to engage your other second party or the other organization much more effectively, which brings us to the pre-close planning and implementation. And that phase is literally like, okay, we've got our solutions catalog, let's build our solution blueprint, let's build a technology footprint that we really want to implement. What's the roadmap tied to it that's going to say these are the direction that we're going to take? What are the resources that we need to have in order to like deliver on this? And let's identify all the MVP list of solutions. But this MVP is literally for this day 01 activity, because day 01, as you realize, and as the name states, is where it's the first day where two entities or multiple entities are integrated as a single entity and are moving forward. So how that day 01 occurs, that's a massive amount of planning and implementation effort that happens at this stage. So once day 01 effort is done, guess what? It's going into integration and implementation, stabilize and transform, where guess what? Some of the activities that were already done based on the data that was collected through this entire due diligence, design, pre-planning phase, is that you start looking at the opportunities going forward. You look at the strategy for the integration. You look at individual solutions catalogs. You look at storing architecture in a single repository. You support and guide implementation. And while that is happening and you're trying to implement the roadmap or aspects of that roadmap, you're doing rinse and repeat again and again towards the strategy, the solutions catalog, the solution blueprint design. And all of these activities are all geared towards ensuring that you do become successful. So I want to go to the next slide. And I want to mention about Sysonex. I want to take the opportunity to mention about Sysonex over here. That is, we use reliable and repeatable methods to ensure success for M&A activities. And over the years, I've noticed that the hardest thing for executives has always been towards making the right decision in absence of information. So yes, executives are trained to deliver directions, guidance, but when you don't have enough information, it's very hard to provide the direction that you want. So going back to the previous slide, this entire area is where information is being gathered, roadmaps are being created, a direction is being built out from a technology landscape towards saying, yes, this merger can be successful. Yes, this merger provides us the value. Yes, this merger has these technology pieces that we can ensure growth and success. And from our approach, we deliver on the business capability model, application portfolio management, the data glossary, the merger acquisitions enterprise risk log. We evaluate some of these risk logs also. There's a solutions catalog associated with solutions blueprints. We deliver on architectural diagrams, repository, and roadmap with timelines available for complete integration. So I keep on saying to folks that don't leave your M&A activity to chance and gradual migration and activity. I've seen M&A work, I've actually been part of a transformation projects where the entire initiative started like 5 or 6 years ago, and they're still trying to integrate. And at some point of time, they also try to say, you know what, let's just, while the merger has occurred, the integration is a failure point. And I want to mention right over here is that the 27%, that's the cross industry average for success. Consumer goods and services are doing better, but lowest is energy, life sciences, retail, and financial services. So my suggestion is that look at your technology footprint, look at what you want to deliver, and look at the value that you can continuously deliver to not only your organization, but to the other organizations that are also like coming on board. So I want to like quickly go back for some folks who joined the meeting just in a little while back. And if we just like go back to some of these slides just to recap. And that is, yes, this is noisy, but guess what? The M&A pain points are visible, and EA definitely delivers on a number of these resolutions on an ongoing basis. The post-merger integration are present. EA actually supports in this area also. And this is the overall workflow that we've noticed. And this is the effort that EAs can contribute, and this is the value proposition, literally from CitizenX as well as from any other EA team. However, we have a much more structured approach in delivering value for your organization and your organizational direction. So that being said, I will stop the recording and I will